Hi, everybody. Welcome to Will Talks. And today I have with me an incredibly talented person, someone who's got so much experience in running schools, working with schools. He's probably worked with 650 plus schools in one of his businesses and mission. His name is Shaunak Chafikar. I'm so happy that you've been able to come today to our studios all the way from Pune. And I think today is going to be really exciting because I personally know you for 5 years and I really admire a lot of the work that you do. Tell us a little bit more about how did you get into your first business? What was that? How did you get motivated and inspired? Because I know that you started your own organization at the age of 17. Would you like to share?
So first of all, thank you so much, Vali, for having me here. Your journey has been inspiring me for the past few years that I've sort of known you as an educator that's been miles ahead of what educationists in India have been doing, and I hope to be inspired by you at the end of this podcast. Right. Going back to my story, I come from Nasik, and small town back in the day. And my journey started actually with a talent hunt that the Times of India had, wherein they called young journalists and helped us write articles for the TOI to come up with an edition exclusively written by kids on Children's Day. And I was fortunate to be sort of selected in that, and that's how my journey with writing per se started. Of course, then I went on to do mechanical engineering, and it was just the bad curriculum and the bad teaching in engineering that got me into my first business, which was back then an online youth magazine with the name Scribido. I was 17 at the time, and I sort of got together a bunch of six, seven very talented kids from Nasik, all friends, and all of us sort of started this together. And Scribero magazine sort of ended up being acquired within the first year of operations. And that got me to my second venture, which is Scribero Campus. The story goes that because we had become so good at writing, my school called me back saying, ki, "Hey, you know what? Can you come and teach our kids how to write?" And that was the start of my first product called the Campus Reporter program, where we went to schools, we taught kids the basics of journalism, the basics of articulation, and once those kids sort of wrote articles, we sort of made customized newsletters for that school. Today, we do customized newsletters for 650 plus schools across 28 cities in India, having a readership of about 18 lakh every month. And that's how my journey with teaching and articulation started. This was, I think, almost 9 years back now. And it's been an extremely fulfilling journey so far, right? Campus Supporter program then went on to add a lot more products for schools. So we have a school management software for school kids. We have something called as Scribdo Talks, that's TED Talks for school kids. We do end-to-end admission management for schools. We do bus tracking for schools. We do end-to-end like printing for them. Essentially, we position ourselves as an end-to-end solution provider for schools, and and of course that's been the first company that we sort of started back in 2014. Today we run four companies in all, Scribdo being one. Second company was Epiphany, which is into IT services for big corporations. We, we count spiritual leaders, banks, startups among our customers here, majorly concentrating on the Western market. But that's the tech side of what we do. My background of mechanical engineering helped me sort of navigate between both these companies. The third company is called FitKey that me and my partner have started together, which is into the fitness business. So we build SaaS tools for a fitness professional to manage his business, his or her business online. And we count some of India's top 30 celeb trainers as our customers there. And of course, we've just taken over the Rosary schools in Pune, two of them, one in Vimannagar and one in Salunke Vihar. And the aim with these schools is whatever learnings we've had, both me and Deepti have had in the last so many years of dealing with schools, we now want to sort of implement with our own schools and give the end customer, that is the parent, the most that we can. So
That
that's been
is
the journey.
that is so cool. Such a wide, illustrious, rich, and varied experience set that you have. And for the purpose of this webinar and for the purpose of this podcast, I think we should amplify more of the work that you're doing around the Rosary School in Pune. It's a school that you've taken over, and now you want to infuse new energy and new strength in it. So, a lot of our viewers are probably leading schools or are at the pivotal moment in their lives when they're supposed to make a significant change in their schools or transform their schools, both as internal leaders or external influencers. And so, if you could share a few thoughts about that in terms of how you're going to be going ahead and doing something like that, that would be really valuable for people who are listening in. Apart from that, I think this whole idea, the Western idea of you want to avoid competitions in school, right? They talk so much more about eliminating competitions and only adding collaborative experiences. While I feel that is really powerful, here is a testimony for me to see that a competition that a corporate company did inside a school sort of led you to start your first entrepreneurial venture, especially in writing and literacy and literature, which I think is so powerful because inside schools, everything that is taught for an examination. Everything that you ask an engineering student, "तो ये book पढ़ेगा क्या?" And he's like, "Yeah, पहला बताओ exam कभी है." Everything is so exam focused. Everything is so assessment focused. But the fact that you got yourself into writing just for fun or for creative expression of your own self and identity is, I think, so powerful. So while schools continue to do a lot of competitive activities, I think they can also augment that with collaborative activities. So what's the first thing that you want to do at the Rosary School when you entered the school or when you took over the school? After having worked with 650 schools, you would have seen so many things that were perhaps not being done very, very well in those other schools. So when you start doing your own school and essentially you're jumping ship, what are the things that you're looking at? Is there a framework? Give us some insight about how you're thinking around this.
So some context to this question, right? So when Deepthi and I first met, we both came from different backgrounds, and where we agreed upon is education hasn't changed in the last 60 years, in this country at least, right? Our principals, our teachers are following the exact same principles that their teachers taught them and their teachers taught them. And that's a big problem because when I was running Scribdo for these last 10 years, I had an outsider's view to how a school functioned, right? And I feel that the most important feedback that a business owner needs is from an outsider about his business. An educator, no matter how hands-on he or she is, does not know what is really happening with the kids, with the stuff. It is the outsider that knows what's happening there. And what we saw with our schools is outdated teaching systems, outdated assessment systems. Um, our system is built to get the averages up, but our system fails miserably when you've got gems in your schools and the system turns those gems into normal stones. That's something that we sort of wanted to change as the first step. The second thing that I wanted to change is educationists fueled by capitalism have turned school into a business. It is a business for most of us, right? But there's a concept called conscious capitalism. You don't need to charge a 3x on the school uniform. You don't need to charge a 4x to take your kids to a picnic, right? The simple joy of that child really enjoying that picnic should be sufficient for your interests. So while today a lot of corporates come into the business with CSR today, uh, we strongly feel that school owners and people who run schools purely as schools need to understand that let's not treat this as a business only. Let's not treat this as only a money making scheme. The impact of your actions on parents, the impact of your actions on kids lasts for a century. One family, one child who does well changes the life for the next 3 generations. And that's what we're trying to do here. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is the first step for us with the schools was to gain the parents' confidence, was to tell the parents that we're not businessmen. We have our businesses. We have capitalism where capitalism is. This is social work for us. This is work that we want to give 10 hours of our day to, because at the end of the day, we want to see our kids happy, we want to see our parents happy.
This is incredible, Shaunak, because two things really bring a smile to my face. One is the fact that there's so much of blind spots that that you mentioned, and I would really like to dig a little bit deeper about what you think about these blind spots that school leaders have, because there is this whole idea that agar aap kar rahe ho kuch, and if you are putting in 24 hours into something, aapko sab kuch pata hai. And that's, from what you're saying, that's almost not true. It's almost like everyone else knows what's going wrong, but the leader or the principal or the key driver of the result probably doesn't know what's going on. So I wanted to expand a little bit more about that. And the second part is about conscious capitalism. The minute you use that word, it put a smile on my face, because about 6 years ago, I met a professor from, I think, I don't know if it's the Boston University, but he was an Indian professor there who wrote this book around conscious capitalism, and how it is important for people or organizations to become more conscious and to slowly evolve commercial discipline as opposed to profiteering as their sole motive. I think even the Fortune 100, I don't think they actually list down alcohol or tobacco companies, because they don't find their work to be impactful, positively to a sustainable world. So that's such a great idea. Would you like to amplify a little bit more about the blind spot when you say that a principal or a school leader or a manager doesn't know actually what's going on? Would you like to very candidly share a few things?
Okay, so say you as a trustee, you walk into a school, right? What is it that you expect to happen? You expect the guard to open your door. You walk into your lobby. You expect the staff to stand and to greet you. Then you go inside your cabin and you sit, and people come to meet you. The best feedback does not come that way. The best feedback does not come by being in a corner office. The best feedback comes when you're in the audience with the parents, not as who you are. You may go there in disguise, but until you have a heart to heart conversation with your parents, with your end customers, you will never know what is really happening. You need to get out of the ego trip that you're in, and we all are on an ego trip. We need to get out to the market and let the market give you real feedback. How many school trustees today are talking to the parent who comes to you to take admission? The founder of Rosary Schools, Mr. A.G. Arana, Deepti's grandfather, would himself sit at the desk and give out admission forms because he wanted to meet the parent, to understand the parent. Apart from VIP kids and their parents, do our school leaders today know who our children are and what backgrounds do they come from? We don't. And that's the biggest blind spot we have. How can our school leaders talk about education and talk about changing the world and this curriculum and NEP when you don't understand your end customers? You don't need an NEP to change the world. You simply need to go to your parents' house, have a meal with them, understand where that child comes from first. That's the first and only blind spot that I'm seeing in education. We have become a bureaucracy. We've become a weird hierarchy based systems where the top guys take feedback only from the principals, only from the teachers. Nobody is talking to the end parent unless there is a complaint or we have a troublemaker parent. We all know that's the unfortunate reality.
This is sad, because it almost appears that everybody else knows what's going on, except perhaps the person who, in the current system, seems to be the only person who can actually have the authority and the influence over changing that system.
And to add to that, you see the problem is you take feedback from your teachers, but you're paying their salaries. How are you as the head of your organization empowering your teachers to give you real feedback? And this is an HR problem. It's not really an education problem per se. When you run an organization, and if the culture is not to take feedback from your team, and if the culture for the team is to not give you feedback, how will real feedback flow? Which is why you only see school trustees in schools when there is troubleshooting, when there is a parent who's made a big issue about a certain thing.
Which means, like, there's so much of just reactive, knee jerk reactions
Correct.
to certain things. And it almost sends a message to parents that if the trustee is not here, the message hasn't gone loud and clear. Or it almost sends another message saying that the only way to get change, to make change happen inside the school, is to create a huge hue and cry about it, which I think both of them are just counterproductive, and we waste so much time doing that. But I want to also focus on another very key insight that you put in, which is about you pay the salary, you ask for the feedback. And many times, feedback is also structured. They give a feedback form. The options are limited to what's there in that. So that is one aspect of collecting feedback. The second aspect that I see from your talk is how are people responding to feedback? Does the school leader or the trustee immediately have an answer or justification to give? Because all reasons are reasonable. You know, do they take feedback for the sake of process improvement, or do they take feedback as a method of justifying their existence within the organization? If that is the case, then what you're saying is so true. It's just the feedback that comes in will be people telling you what they want you to hear, or rather, people telling you what they think you want to hear.
And here's the problem. You see, feedback is taken seriously only if the goal is the right goal, right? If the goal today is to maximize profit from the school, the feedback is only centered around admissions, right? The minute the admission numbers go down, a school leader wakes up and, oh my God, something is going wrong, but I don't know what, right? The bigger issue here is that school leaders need to change their goalposts. Those goalposts need to go from financial profiteering to how do I do more for all of my parents. And the minute that is the goal, so I'm a big believer of this age old yogic principle that everything in the body has to align in a certain way and everything just falls in place. The same holds true for organizations, where if the leader aligns the entire organization and rallies him around one goal, and that goal being making our parents happy by imparting great education, if that goal is common and everybody else aligns to just that one goal, suddenly feedback flows very freely through the entire system, which then leads to your financial profiteering as well. Look, we live in a capitalist world. You need money to make schools run. So no one's like denying the fact that you don't need the cash. You do need the cash. But over the years, what has happened is we've forgotten why we started what we are doing today. We're starting schools only to make money. It's not about that. You need the money to run the schools.
Yeah.
The day you start to run the schools to make money, parents' trust in schools as an institution will disappear. Today, you have a government that's backing the school system and saying that, hey, you know what? Your child needs to go to a school. You remove that today and you see how many kids start to homeschool. Schools are comforted by the fact that it is a government rule that the child needs to go to a school. The system has backed you up. And because the system has backed you up, you're careless and you're inefficient. You remove that backing for 2 minutes and and come back into an open market, which is true capitalism, where we all compete in the open market. And that's when you'll be forced to drive efficiencies through your system.
This is incredible insight, because I think it's something that people just take for granted. They just feel like हर बच्चा स्कूल में होना चाहिए, because it's a fundamental right of every citizen in this country, especially after the passing of the RTE bill in 2009, where every child needs to have free and compulsory education, elementary education. And the fact that India has such a large burgeoning population and itself means that there's ample opportunity for schools. And just because there's this government regulation, as you said, schools are flooded with children. And very easy for principals to start thinking that they're flooded because of the exceptional quality that the school is delivering,
Correct.
which could be so counterintuitive, because it's probably not just the quality, it's just the accessibility. If you ask a parent today, why do you join this particular school? What do you think parents say today? If you ask a random parent, why are you joining this school? ये school आपने क्यों join किया?
That's the second black hole. When you use a product, you're using it yourself. You can use it, you can feel it, and you can give the owner of the product real feedback. COVID exposed the education system in India. Parents, for the first time, entered the class through the Zoom lectures and saw how good or bad your teachers were. We were naked for the first time. That's why schools were stressed, because they knew their inefficiencies, they knew their issues, but the parent could not see it. What can the parent see? Parent is seeing good infrastructure, parent is seeing CCTVs. जो आंखों को दिखता है, the parent is seeing that,
The optics.
the optics. But what the child is feeling inside the school, is the child really learning? The parent can't see that. So how does a parent make an informed decision? He can't do that. He looks at a fancy campaign, he goes to the school, he's met with a fancy principal, and that's it. At the end of the day, school admissions are run by the market and by the fees. The parent doesn't care about what real education. Very few percentage of parents are really talking about education, because look, a parent himself has 1,000 problems to deal with in his or her own life. You have a bad boss, you have a bad marriage, you have a bad house. There are lots of issues that we have. It is not only the parent's job to care for their child's education. The parent has given us the child. Education is our job. It's not their job.
From what you say, what really saddens me is because when a parent thinks that he or she has put their children in the best possible option that they had in their area, given their priorities and their reach, then the parent starts thinking that the school is now doing everything that the school possibly can because the parent has taken that decision, knowing or feeling or believing or convincing that this is the best school that their child can get, which means now the parent completely believes that, which now means that if no learning is happening, my biggest worry is they start blaming their own children, thinking that their children probably can't learn. I don't think parents actually feel that unless school teachers or the school system starts making them believe that. And that then really puts a tear in my eye, because then we are actually saying, then we are actually blaming the person with the least amount of advocacy, the least amount of power within the system, which is the child. Uh, and I think that hurts any educator out there.
And that child is put into a tuition class. So you've got 6 hours of school, and then you've got 3 hours of tuitions after school. For a school of, so in all my experience of dealing with schools, and I've dealt with all kinds of schools whose fees are 15,000 a month, sorry, a year, to schools whose fees are 15 lakh a year, and I've seen the difference. The kids in all these schools are the same, because I am a teacher. So when I go and teach these kids, the interest in both is the same. It's what happens after the 10th standard, the kind of opportunities that kids get, basis their background, that changes the child's life. But I'm going on a different topic here. Coming back to what you were saying. How are schools okay with their kids going for tuitions after schools? What are we doing then? Is our job just to build a fancy infrastructure? Is that it? And to just sort of have teachers in the school teach something? How many trustees are going inside the classroom and seeing what is being taught? How many trustees are putting their own kids in their own schools? If you can't use your own product, you're not proud of it, right? That's the problem. We as educators have wrong goalposts today.
And then we are achieving them.
Yes. And I think we are in a very, very sorry situation. We as Indians are smart, and probably hence our kids are doing well and have done well. But I can guarantee you that, so these days on Instagram you see all schools posting about, hey, you know what, my student has won first place in so and so
Yeah.
examination. The school's got nothing to do with that.
In spite of the school.
Yes. It's the parent who takes the child to an art class. It's the parent who finds out the exam.
Yeah.
It's the parent who enrolls the thing. And then the parent is happy that school is acknowledging that my child has done so well. Are those our standards today? What are we doing? And that's why we entered the Rosary schools. After 10 years of seeing this, all of us are short on time, and sort of when I have conversations with my customers, my friends, school trustees, they all accept this. It's not like they don't know. They're extremely smart people. All of them are extremely brilliant people in their own fields. But sometimes there's just so much work and such a sort of lack of time bandwidth that you lose focus of what the real goal was and
Yeah.
what did I get into this with. So what we are doing with our schools today is this, that how can I change all of what I've just mentioned?
How are you
And
going to do that? How are you going to invigorate your teachers? How are you going to bring vibrancy in your curriculum?
so the
How
first
are you
thing
going to
that we
make it
did,
profitable, or
no,
rather commercially sustainable and viable?
so the first thing that we did, and this is one thing that sort of Deepti and I had agreed on day one, is if our team if our team of teachers is not well trained, is not well motivated, is not aligned to the right goals, none of this will really make a difference. So I'll tell you the first thing I did. When a school trustee goes to a school, do you know he does not call the principal, he calls the accountant. कितना pending due है? The principal comes to the school trustee saying कि sir is इतना like pending है, but I have done so and so. So she's also trying to sort of save her back. We changed that culture. We said we don't want to have that pending due conversation at all. First, what we do is, what are we giving to the parent? The school culture needs to change basis that our teachers today know we're not giving our parents everything. They know कि सब चोर है. We first changed that, and we are sort of changing that right now, wherein our teachers are being trained, are being spoken to, are being aligned to the goal of educating our kid. There are never bad kids. So, change takes time, right?
Yeah.
A lot of our teachers have had different thoughts, let's just say that. So
They
when
come from different schools.
they come from
They've
different
had different
schools.
experiences.
So when they face a bad kid in a school or sort of in their classrooms, they come to us saying, you know what, this child is doing X, Y, Z, so let's suspend the child. I mean, he's out of our hands. We as trustees have gotten involved in that as well, to try to understand what is the child's background like, where does he come from, what are his motivations, why does he do a certain thing. And I'm sorry, but a school counselor does not fix that, because your school counselor may be on paper educated, but is not really equipped to deal with the situation. So do we, again, going back to the first point, do we understand our parents? Do we understand our kids?
And I want to ask you this really biting question. After you do all this training with your teachers, are you open to letting them go?
We are, because, look, because I've been a teacher for the last 10 years, my kids have learned under me, they've gone out, they've done well. And I've taught kids articulation, right? I feel that articulation is the most primary skill that humans need to have. I mean, with chat GPT like coming up, your aptitude and your intellect can be borrowed by a third party AI today. But how you articulate what you've learned is something that's just yours. So because I've taught kids articulation for so many years, they've come back to me and they've thanked me.
I totally resonate with what you're saying, because I was listening to this amazing talk by Dr. Wolfram, who's working on ChatGPT and generative AI, and he said he has noticed that students or people who are very good at articulation and especially expository writing are able to prompt the LLMs, large language models such as Claude or ChatGPT, to be able to deliver phenomenal results. So you see that people who cannot articulate, cannot write, cannot expositorily write what they want, they don't get the right responses from these tools anyway, which then means that people used to think that because of ChatGPT or large language models, you don't need to actually get your basic skills. It is actually proving that people with very strong basic skills, right, are able to manipulate and use these tools to the fullest extent. So I completely resonate with what you're saying.
And the reason for that is articulation has got to do a lot with EQ and not IQ.
Oh,
There is an element of IQ, yes, but if you don't understand the emotion of the human who you're speaking to, you can't articulate that well. You need to understand your human to be a great. So, we abuse politicians, right? We none of us really likes politicians as such, right? But they're excellent articulators. They know their audience. They know the pulse of that audience really well. Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 2004, when he lost the election, when India 1 was doing well, they couldn't articulate what they were feeling to the audience the right way. They had a India Shining campaign, if you remember.
yeah, English.
And India Shining failed That's not what the end customer was feeling. It's again, you come back to EQ. You come back to understanding your customer by being with him, not in your office.
So here's my question. If understanding your customer is so important, then in a school setting, does it become easier because most of these customers are probably categorized in one only? Like, I don't need to go and learn about 200 of my first standard grade students. Maybe I can do a focus group at two, three, or four and then extrapolate that. Do you think that is a good strategy to do?
I don't think so, because
Okay.
I feel like brilliance comes from speaking to all 200 of them and finding that one thing that really works for. See, taking feedback is not always about scale. What you're trying to say is let's have a focus group. That's talking about scale, right? And that's another issue with education. The top teachers in the country can't do it at scale. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
It's not a business. You can teach only 30 kids the right way. You can't do it for 2,000 kids. But coming back to your
So the
first question,
scale idea need not be retrofitted into education directly. I think we need to then think about, are we scaling in, rather than scaling out, right?
so when a lot of parents come to me for feedback in terms of, hey, you know what, which school should I take my
Oh yeah,
my,
so
my
many
child
people must
to?
be asking you.
That happens a lot. And I explain this concept to parents saying that, okay, you know what, you've got X school, that is a corporate type of a school. You got X school, that's a founder run school, and you can expect XYZ there. And then you've got X school, which is a huge trust run school, and you can expect XYZ. There are different types of schools. Parents need to understand which school is right for my kid. Some kids will do extremely well in a corporate school. I myself am a product of a founder run school. My 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 first principal, Mrs. Daisy Padiwala, was an exceptional lady, right? And I've learned so much from her. In fact, when I speak in my assembly, is a lot of what comes from her. And I was quite lucky that my
Which
mom.
school is that? Would you like to give some credit to them?
This is a school called Fravish Academy back in Nasik,
Ah.
and we've had some beautiful days. So you see, for a Nasik kid to go to a metro like a Bombay or a Pune or a Delhi or a Bangalore, today with the internet things are a lot more easier. But back in the day, when I first came to Bandra, my friends from other schools were shocked because the culture is so different. A puff back in Nasik costed $3 back in the day. In Bandra, it costed probably like $20. It's a big shock. My principal prepared me for that, right? So, but circling back to your first question, am I okay to let my teachers go? Yes, but they will not go, and the reason for that is I strongly believe, and this is again a point that Deepti and I have had long discussions about. Teachers are not teachers only for the money. Teachers are teachers because they truly believe in the impact. And in our orientation to the teachers, that's what we said, that y'all are not here for the cash. Y'all can do well outside. Everyone knows that today. Let's face it. If the management realizes this, that the teacher's happiness will come from her kids doing well, and we create that environment for our teachers, as I said in the first point, it all then aligns.
So my next question is probably going to raise some eyebrows, but I still want to go ahead and ask you anyway because I think that your teachers have prepared you well. So what do you do? I looked at this report last week about why the Great Resignation. Why are people leaving jobs? And like 80% of the reason why people are leaving jobs is because they feel like their bosses are not very good. Okay. Now we don't know what makes them feel that their boss is not very good. The next reason that they feel is like they just don't feel that the company is kind of good, the culture is really good, and things like pay things like salaries were like very low in the in that particular order. So now I want to ask you this question: if you're going to be spending so much time training your teacher, you are going to come across teachers who are not hitting the performance criteria. Okay. How at the Rosary School, you personally or you as an organization, how do you plan to handle incompetence from a teacher? Because the side effect of that is definitely on the children first. Then how do we look at availability for the next teacher that comes in? And third, by training teachers, how would you ensure that teachers don't think that the training you're giving them is actually amounting to extra work? Because there could be a possibility of that, maybe. I don't know. I know these are complex questions, but these are also questions that are in the minds of many people. Because reading some research about school development in the US, they say the responsibility of learning inside the school rests on the school leader. And that's why the US research from the Wallace Foundation shows that 27% of the student outcomes depend on the principal. And hence all this work around principal development. But in India, it kind of appears that all the responsibility of learning is at the teacher, at the class teacher. And I have seen that because parents come and say, टीचर से मिलना है. I said, क्यों प्रिंसिपल से नहीं मिलना है? नहीं, ट्रांसपोर्ट का कुछ इशू होगा तो प्रिंसिपल से मिलेंगे. Almost like the parents make the principal the fiduciary responsible person for administration and not learning, whereas the teacher, they feel teacher मेरा बच्चे को सिखाता है, तो teacher is responsible for learning. Now, if I have to make my teacher teach better, then I need to train better. If I'm training better, could I get into that situation where the teacher feels like, अरे यहाँ पे बहुत training होता है, too much to learn, and because I'm not learning well enough because of the learning curve is steep, then I may not perform, and if I don't perform, then I may get kicked out.
So I'll give you a different perspective to both your points, right?
Okay.
How many school trustees are allowing their principals to teach? And that's the first call that we took. We wanted our principals to teach. That's the first rule that we had for them. Because again, if the principal is away from the market being the kids, how can she do well there? How can she make fixes to her process, right? So the first way to fix that is the principal must teach. And as school leaders, we need to know to not dump admin duties on the principal. There are more qualified people for that. You can get those people. A principal has always been inherently a people's person, a teacher. She loves that. You make her a principal, you elevate her, but you take the part about the job that she has actually loved the most all these years.
And probably did the best.
Correct, right? So, first of all, our principals teach, and we always want them to teach. Maybe not the entire day, 2 lectures a day, but our principals have to teach to have the pulse of what's happening with the market. Second, and this is where our experience of running our companies works well. You see, in an IT company, such as the one that I run, attrition is extremely high. People keep leaving all the time. Every 8 months, 9 months, average life is very less there. I mean, attrition is not a school problem, it's an IT problem.
I used to think it's only a school
No. Schools are super lucky, right?
Okay.
IT is bad. You offer someone a 10% raise and he will switch. You see, you can deal with attrition only by 2 things. One is as the leader talking about the growth of your team member. That, okay, you are X here today. This is where I envision you in the next 5 years. If you don't spend time with your team members talking about their growth, they'll get bored and they'll leave. The guys who don't want to talk about the growth are wrong guys. Please throw them out. And this is where concepts of capitalism are extremely important in a school setting. If you've got to do good work, you can't tolerate incompetence, right? You can't do it. You're being dishonest to yourself, to your parents, to your entire support system if you allow incompetence to creep in anywhere. So while our schools are while our schools are being done for social work and we intend to only do it to make our kids and parents happy, for us to do that, concepts of capitalism need to be followed. Incompetence needs to be thrown out. And automatically, once you flip this cycle, what I just spoke about is the reverse of your cycle. But the minute you flip this cycle, you start to attract the right kind of talent because your organization has scaled because of these things. And as it has scaled, your name has spread wide, people come to you. And we've seen this happen in our companies, in the corporate space. And we'll hopefully see the same thing happen in the school space as well.
You certainly cut yourself like a huge responsibility, and more power to you, Shaunak, and your team, and Deepti, because what you're doing is you're doing some phenomenal work. You're going to be, in many ways, I say it's God's work to be able to sit down and work with children and to widen their horizons and to allow them to have an enriching experience of the life that is set before them. And at the Rosary School, I think parents are also going to be very, very happy. It's like a surprise gift. Maybe they didn't ask for it, but they'll be so glad that they got this gift. And I really hope that you open your doors to other school trustees and people who'd want to learn how to develop their own schools. And if you could continue to share your journey as you go about facing these challenges and overcoming these challenges in ways that are innovative and unseen within the educational space. Are you open to having more people come and visit you? Would you like to share some coordinates that people could find about the Rosary School and about your work?
Oh, yes. I think one mission for both Deepti and me is to visit as many schools as possible and sort of involve the greater ecosystem, get them all towards a common goal where we go a bit away from capitalism and towards conscious capitalism, right? That is the aim. Yes.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Shaunak, for being today with us and sharing your insights. I'm sure that there are things out of this talk that people can really ruminate over time, and they will start seeing. I think collectively, when everyone starts talking about what they're doing, more principals start feeling like they're not alone,
Correct.
and that I think starts creating this this wavelength all around and helps people get onto the right frequency so that our children can do better. Thanks for being on the Will Talk show today.
Thank you so much. Love this. Thanks a lot.